Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the Texas SignalCast. I'm your host, Joe Desotel, and I'm here with my co-host, Jessica Montoya Coggins. Hello, Jessica.
Hey, Joe.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about the redistricting stuff and a few other things that are going on. But Ted Cruz is back in the news, so we'll be talking about Ted Cruz a little bit. So let's just jump right in. So the redistricting maps passed, and Abbott basically signed them at the beginning of the week. And so immediately we saw lawsuits, and I think we'll continue to see lawsuits. There's some really bad things on the congressional maps as well as the Senate and the House maps, where essentially Republicans just shored themselves up and made sure that their incumbent friends would come back. Um, and a lot of the looks like Republicans that were paired against each other were folks who were already planning on retiring, and so that's just how they basically got around that. Um, but that means now that we have maps, that we have a filing deadline, and we know that folks are going to start filing for office soon. Now that we have the maps, people know where they, what districts they fall in, and they can start thinking about that. So the filing deadline is Monday, December 13th, 6 p.m. for those who would like to follow along. I think Patrick Zvitek every year puts out like a spreadsheet, and so as people's names pop up there, he starts to do that. So this is actually a really fun time for political operatives and stuff who kind of want to see who's all running for what. Any interesting names that have floated up for you recently?
Sure. Well, in our neck of the woods, there was a lot of reshuffling going around. Some candidates dropped out after they were kind of redistricted out. There was a change in sort of the numbers. So the old John Turner district has kind of shifted. So there's a lot of people that are running in that open seat. As I mentioned before, I got totally redistricted, even though I didn't move anywhere. So I have a all new Republican slate ahead of me. So I'll be interested to see who is filing where. But yeah, so it is, I think, interesting. There are a lot of names that are, popping out. And those cases, as we said, about those maps are going forward. We know MALDEF filed, Voto Latino also filed. They did theirs with Mark Elias, the sort of Democrat super lawyer. But yeah, pointing out again that these maps are pretty ridiculous for a state that had 95% of its growth, fueled by people of color, to actually increase white majority districts is pretty egregious and appalling. So we shall see. And I do think though that the primary, I would be surprised if it moved past March where it is currently slated, just simply because I think Greg Abbott just wants to get his primary out of the way. So the sooner the better for him.
Agree. I think the longer this goes on, the worse it is for him. As a matter of fact, you saw people to his right calling for an additional special session. So they are not done with the conservative agenda as far as they're concerned. And we'll see how that plays out for Abbott. But yeah, I think you're right. He's got about, he's 50 plus $1 million that he's raised. And so he'll start spending that. Apparently, he's already started spending that against Beto. I have not seen any of the ads, but I've heard already that he's running ads against Beto, who has yet to even announce that he's going to run for governor. But guess when you got that much cash?
Yeah,
Hey,
he's got the nickname already shored up. So I think it's Wrong Way O'Rourke, which is a bit of a tongue twister.
wrong
I'm
way, O'Rourke.
wrong way. But it's a little like
Yeah,
I'm
that
definitely
is.
gonna
Yeah,
mess
I
that up
won't
at
be
some
saying
point.
that a lot. Yeah, I won't be saying that 5 times fast. That's for sure. But yeah, so he's already spending the money. I mean, and so I think it's partly because he can, but also because there's been a lot of rumors about Beto, and as basically he moves farther to the right, that opens him up to the middle and the left. So I think he's starting to kind of shore that up a little bit by reminding folks, oh, you don't want Beto because X, Y, and Z. um but we've seen a little bit of other shakeup in your North Texas part of the woods. Eddie Bernice Johnson has not announced that she won't run for reelection. However, the fact that there are already three primary candidates in that race, people are starting to suspect that maybe after a few decades in Congress, or at least a couple, that she may be finally retiring.
I've heard that too. Now I will just sort of say I love EBJ. She has sort of raised a couple of times that this session will be her last. She said that I think 2015, 2017. So we've heard this before. So for me, unless I do not see that name on the
Right.
ballot,
Yeah.
then I'm like,
Yeah.
but no, there actually are some interesting people that have been running, that are running. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm with you on some of the older, members. They flirt with retiring quite a bit, and these other folks really need to be well positioned to step in case that does happen. Um, but I feel like for her, I mean, it's possible that we lose the majority, as outrageous as that is. But after the gerrymandering that's going to take place across the country, we could very well end up losing the majority. And if you've been in Congress for 30 years and going from you've been in the wilderness and then they got the majority and then they'll lose it again, I mean, I think it's a good time to retire if you've been there that long, quite honestly. And I'd say the same for House members too. In the state legislature, we thought we had a chance last time to flip the house, and we didn't. And after these maps, this is going to make it even harder in the next two cycles. And I just feel like, I mean, I don't want to say what's the point, but for members that have been there a long time, I feel like this is a good transition time, and get somebody else in there who can be in there another 10 or 15 years, build up seniority while we try to ultimately get enough maps, go through the courts or change some of these maps so we can get enough Democrats to take the House again. But as we know, also the legislative board, redistricting board, is made up of three statewide offices. So even if we did have the House and could stop bad maps, we would still need either the Senate and the governorship, or some combination of three of the five statewide offices, or offices that sit on that board. So a lot of minutia, but the point is, it's not good, and it's really unfortunate. It just seems like everything with the way our system is set up just benefits the conservative party, the conservative people in power, and it's so unfortunate. I mean, we see that in the Senate right now. You know, we even have a majority in the Senate, and we still can't get things done because of the rules, because of the way the rules are set up to benefit essentially a minority of people, who want to keep power because they've had it for a long time.
Well, and we even mentioned that last week that Abbott, named a new Secretary of State, and he did that without, the Senate approval. I think that's another reason that there's not going to be another special session. But this is just highly undemocratic.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really unfortunate. But so one of the things that they did not pass this session, that they're calling for a fourth special session for, was a bill that Greg Abbott wanted to pass that would essentially make it illegal for any entity in the state of Texas to mandate a vaccine. So that would mean, the airlines, which we just saw Southwest Airlines mandated for their employees, and a judge just ruled that they in fact could do that, which we already know because the federal government is going to supersede, and especially on something like the transportation. And so basically, what's happened since is this has been one of those rally cries for the right, that Greg Abbott should be doing this and the state legislature should be doing this. But so it looks like maybe he's enlisted Paxton in this. AG Ken Paxton, our indicted attorney general, has pledged to sue on behalf of any state agency refusing COVID-19 vaccine mandates.
Right. So the Biden executive order, stipulates that federal contractors have a deadline to get the COVID-19 vaccine, and that is coming up in December. And so Paxton has essentially sort of leapfrogged over that, saying to any state agency that employs federal contractors, I will sue on your behalf. He has technically not actually filed this lawsuit. He'd been planning, he was saying that he was going to sue the Biden administration. That's just kind of because some of the guidance from OSHA, a subsidiary of the Labor Department, hasn't quite come up with their stuff yet. But this is they're adamantly opposed to this. We know that Don Huffines this has been a huge thing with him for Abbott, calling Abbott weak for not having this blanket order. And I mean, this is just, I mean, we're coming up, over 68,000 Texans have died from COVID-19. That number is probably going to go over 70,000 pretty soon, even though hospitalizations are down. There's still deaths that are happening, and each one is I think almost everyone is unnecessary at this point. And it's just very tragic that this is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is the unnecessary part of it that's so bad. And I saw that Dr. Birx, who many people don't look very fondly on her because they think she was sort of under the thumb of the Trump administration, refused to really push back on some things. But she recently said that we could have saved well over 100,000 lives just if they would have been not distracted so much with trying to overturn the election. And so we see that transcribed right here in Texas with what we saw during the special session and what they're trying to do in sort of the narrative that they formed around the vaccines. And at the same time, the companies that have implemented them, it's working. And they're saying that, hey, look, our employees, are hitting these marks, 96, 98% of our employees are getting vaccinated, and that's creating a safer environment, and that's going to allow customers to feel safer and be able to go back out and leave their homes and go back out and live their life again the way Republicans keep saying that they want to do, which is not going to happen otherwise. And so it's really incredible. And so, the vaccine supposedly is going to be available to kids. It looks like the Pfizer vaccine has been approved for children, and Texas has 2.9 million children that'll become eligible. And that, we're talking about getting kids back in school and things like that. And they don't want kids to wear masks. Well, here's your chance.
And by the way, if you send your kid to a public school like I was, you already had to vaccinate your kids for numerous diseases. This is, I think, the 18th one that you're asking for, basically.
And they work. And so, yeah, and so that's why we do it. And of course, this is these school districts have already been fighting with Paxton over this. And so I think that it's very helpful. This is one thing that parents can do and administrators can do, is promote the vaccine. And even though if they can't mandate it, they can help to kind of create the safer environment where we reduce that spread and reduce the effects that it's having on folks. And that would obviously be a good thing. But it looks like Republicans are just not done with the schools yet. So not only do they want to make it not a safe environment, but also they want to change the learning aspect of the environment and the books that kids are reading. And I know you did a story on this one as well. So Matt Krause, who is currently a recently retired state representative, he stepped down in order to challenge Ken Paxton for AG. Is trying to make a name for himself, it seems like, by going after kids once again. In this case, it is books and certain books and types of books, and specifically looking for, quote, material that might make students feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress because of their race or sex, or convey that a student, by virtue of their race or sex, is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously.
Yes. So he sent this letter to the Texas Education Agency, as well as several superintendents of school districts. And this letter also came with an addendum, a 16-page addendum with over 850 books. Every time I looked at it, I would find something new that was, just crazy. A lot of books from actually, I think, some really celebrated authors. The recent best-selling book by Ruby Bridges, the civil rights pioneer, is on that list. A lot of books that also deal with just like basic health things are on there. And then many books that deal with LGBT content. There was a book that I really liked that I read a couple months ago. Dante and Aristotle discover the secrets of the universe. I thought it was a lovely young adult novel. I would, heartily recommend it for anyone. It does deal with some themes about, discovering your sexuality. But so yeah, this was it made a lot of headlines. It was, I think, startling for a lot of people to just have such a blatant example of I guess this is what they really do call cancel culture that is coming out of the woodwork here.
Yeah, and it's ironic because they're the ones that were mocking liberals for cancel culture, and saying facts don't care about your feelings, and then they go and want to ban books. And it's weird to me because 5 years ago they talked about bringing church and religion and Bible back in schools. Well, I don't know if he's actually read the Bible, but there's a few books in the Bible that talk about these themes of sex and sexuality, and might quite make students feel discomfort and perhaps some guilt based on sort of the way it's talked about in those contexts. But we're supposed to understand context, and that is part of learning. And so it just strikes me as how could he have a list of 800 books without the number one book of all time, certainly in their eyes, not being on that list. I don't understand how they could square that. But
Yeah, so I was that this comes at a time when Republicans have been talking so much about critical race theory. They want to stomp that out of the classroom. I talked with an author recently who was on that list. Her name is Anastasia Higginbotham. She wrote a picture book called Not My Idea, a book about whiteness. That was the book that was actually cited by Steve Toth when he was drafting that sort of quote anti-critical race theory bill, HB 3979. And she was very flabbergasted that her book has got this widespread attention from Republicans in Texas. She certainly does not see it as a race shaming book at all. In fact, I think it's supposed to be the opposite on that. She's trying to help kids on a path of social justice, is how she put it. But I was looking over social media and looking at other children's authors, their reaction to being on this list, and some were like, well, that was a surprising thing to wake up to, but then others were very concerned that this is trying to really create a very sheltering environment for kids, one where you're intentionally trying to not teach them history and important things that will develop them along their way to adulthood.
yes, I mean the whole thing is it's pretty infuriating. I mean, these folks using this type of these tactics and just going in, and they've basically transcribed all of their culture war stuff that they've been throwing at Democrats down to kids, and they've been doing this the last couple of years. We saw it start with like trans kids and things like that. They successfully passed that bill here at the end of the last session. And then now they're going, like you said, with the critical race stuff, and now books of all kinds. So it's just like this never ending thing. And then we end up, you just get to these certain moments in time, and you just have to wonder if there is an end to all this. So we saw Ted Cruz the other day, essentially, and this was related to school, right? This was a school district issue, basically defending a Nazi salute. Can you tell us a little bit? I think you're working on a story for this.
Sure. So he was at a Senate hearing. This was with the Attorney General Merrick Garland a couple of weeks ago. The Department of Justice sort of issued this one-page letter to U.S. attorneys around the country, just to let them know about the rise of hateful, violent rhetoric around school board meetings. So this obviously incensed Republicans. They latched onto this, talking about the tyranny of Joe Biden with these school districts. And so at this hearing, Ted Cruz, I guess, defended a man who was at a school board hearing and was talking. He was an anti-mask parent, or I don't even know if he was a parent. He might even have children in this school. Who knows? But he was, decrying mask usage, and then he did a Nazi salute. And so Ted Cruz basically defended that individual, saying, that, you know, he does feel this way about masks, as do many parents, which not quite as much as you think, but it was. I mean, when you're kind of at the point, and you're trending on Twitter with Nazi salute, that I think you've really done something very, very wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something called Godwin's Law. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it is an internet meme sort of thing. And it basically goes something like the longer a comment section and a conversation goes on online, the more likely it is that someone will be compared to Adolf Hitler or the Nazis. That's basically it. And Ted Cruz just brings it straight up to the top. And it's amazing how on one hand they're saying critical race theory is terrible. We can't talk about race or anything. Somebody might feel uncomfortable, but a Nazi salute, no, that's the First Amendment. That's what we have to protect. All these books over here that kids have been reading for generations, we need to get rid of those. We need to burn those. This Nazi salute over here, that's what we should be really trying to protect. So I don't know. I kind of look for consistency, but I'm starting to feel like these guys may be full of crap.
I think so. We've also had a couple articles about Ted Cruz. He's had this long blockade against ambassadors. Our colleague William has been following this. And, this is supposed to be a very principled thing for Ted Cruz. It has to deal with this Russian uh, streamliner or something. And, Cruz did actually lift that for two former senators, Tom Udall and Jeff Flake. So he let their ambassadorships go through, as well as two widows of senators, including Cindy McCain. So one kind of thinks like, all right, are you really that principled? Because you're so adamant about this, but actually my former colleagues and their spouses, I'll let it slide.
I didn't even realize that. Wow. But yeah, but there's no question about Ted Cruz. Definitely does not have any kind of real, true moral compass. Only a political wind vane, so to speak.
Well,
But
hence his relationship with sports, because he's gone very much. He a couple of months ago he chided the Major League Baseball. This was after the Cleveland team announced that they were changing their name to the Guardians. So he decried Major League Baseball for being woke. Also, when they announced the All-Star game would not be held in Atlanta after some voter suppression bills, he made it seem like he was done with Major League Baseball. But I don't know. He was at the Astros game recently and had an interesting sign there.
he
Have you
sure
heard
will.
about this?
Yes, go Brandon, right? So yeah, I think this may be another story you're working on. If I'm not correct, were you working on a story about this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, you can tell the story. I am a Astros fan, so this absolutely just annoys me that Ted Cruz would even be seen with an Astros jersey on. But let's go, Brandon.
Yes, let's go, Brandon. So if you've heard that, if you've seen that phrase and you're like, what, who is this Brandon? You're not going crazy. This is actually something that's popped up, and it's very popular with Ted Cruz. It's very popular with the Greg Abbott campaign. You can actually buy some Let's Go Brandon wrapping paper. But so there actually is a Brandon. He won a race car thing a couple of weeks ago. That's really a sport I don't follow that much. But in video from the event, you can hear people chanting. This was at Talladega in Alabama. They were shouting the F word and Joe Biden's name. And so the reporter on the sidelines was basically, I guess, trying to do some damage control, said, oh, they're chanting, let's go, Brandon, which they very clearly weren't. But so Republicans have just taken this and run with it. And now it's this huge viral meme for them. There's several songs on Apple charts right now about this. And yes, Ted Cruz was at the Astros game posing alongside someone with a "Let's Go Brandon" poster. And Paxton, he's been using this a lot too, as he's ended press conferences. So you are not
But
crazy
yeah,
if you think you're hearing Brandon all the time.
right. Yes. But we're supposed to believe that they're very concerned about how children learn and what we put in front of and expose children to. And yet this is like what they're putting in their campaign stuff. Um, and you made a really good point on an editorial call this morning that like in order to even know what they're even talking about, you have to be so deep in the minutia of their little ecosystem that they have. Otherwise, yeah, you hear that kind of a phrase and you know it's something, but yeah,
Well, this is kind of what inspired my grandfather. I guess he's at a facility right now. He's probably, I think, one of the few people who does not watch Fox News, but it was on
uh,
in a common room. And so he asked me, he was like, "What's Brandon? Who is Brandon?" So I kind of heard of this, so I explained it to him. And yeah, you're right. You have to be like a very, very online person to understand what they're talking about in many instances. And so this is one of those situations too.
and you know what? I mean, it's just as woke as anything they could use the liberals of. I mean, it just means being aware. I mean, and so they want to have these little super niche sort of conversations so that they can say, "Oh, you're with us or you're not with us." Because if you're out there like, "Let's go, Brandon," then they know, "Oh, you're on my little team and my little niche or whatever." The only difference is that when Democrats do it, it's because we're trying to be inclusive of other people and we're trying to be aware of how the things we say might affect other people. And when the Republicans do it, it's literally just to insult people. And it's always like some kind of a negative attack on some group of people or an individual in this case. And so they're doing what they're accusing us of doing, but they're doing it to literally hurt people as opposed to like just not be a jerk, you know? I mean,
It's a very much a grievance culture with
yeah,
a
there
lot
you
of these
go. That's it.
Republicans, and
It's
it's
grievance.
they always talk about, oh, the mainstream media, they're so against us, but it's like they would love nothing more than to be the mainstream media. It's why they get so
That's
wrapped up.
exactly right.
It's Ted Cruz. It's why you get so animated about the when Dr. Seuss was canceled, which
Mm-hmm.
spoiler alert, that never happened. And it's he was so incensed when Gina Carano was fired from The Mandalorian, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
they just wish that they had
Yeah,
this
absolutely, and that's why they
actual.
always complain about the elite liberals on the coastal elites because they want to go to the Met Gala, they want to be
It's yeah,
invited to that,
it's like
and they're
Dan
not.
Crenshaw. It's like Dan Crenshaw when he made that campaign video. It's like
Mm-hmm.
he wants to be,
Hollywood,
yeah, he wants to be with Dave Bautista. He wants to be,
yeah.
alongside Chris Evans or the Avengers, really. And
Mm-hmm.
they pretty much, with the exception of one, they all hate you.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's it. You really nailed it. That's exactly what it is. But while we're sort of still in the Astros, I do have to say they had a great game last night. I don't know when people are going to be listening to this, but the Astros have, tied the series at home, and so we'll be going to Atlanta for the next game. But we did really good. So besides that little Ted Cruz cameo, very proud of the Houston Astros. Um, and the last thing I'll say on this, because I think this is kind of funny, uh the culture of the Republicans always wanting to be cool, but never quite being able to figure it out. And so they're kind of angry and mad. I think it perfectly fits in with this whole crypto bro like culture that's going on. And so I thought this little piece was funny. Basically, Republicans want to make Texas like the crypto capital so that like all the mining and all that goes on here. And for folks that don't know, basically it takes a whole bunch of computing power to essentially mine and make these these transactions on the blockchain. And so you can spend hours learning about blockchain and still not have a clue about what it really is, and that's totally fine. But for the purposes of this, just know that it takes tons of computing power, and the fact of our grid not being stable is a big concern for people who who are looking at this.
This is I think, actually a perfect encapsulation of the Republican Party, where they keep on trying to bring in these industries, and actually the
Mhm.
industries kind of realize, wait, that one thing that you said you were
Yeah.
good about, maybe we have to second guess. I've actually wondered this with Tesla too, with these electric cars, and I'm like, I
Well,
don't know about
yeah.
this.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can't legally buy a Tesla, and they moved their headquarters here, and you cannot legally buy one in the state. And that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So, well, with that, I think that's that's pretty good. So we'll continue to follow along with the redistricting stuff as these lawsuits actually, pan out and their judgments made. We'll of course be writing stories on these and following very closely the twists and the turns. And I don't expect that it's going to change anything for this cycle, but it could in the future. So we'll keep a very close eye on that, and also be watching as new names pop up for office. We still don't have a gubernatorial candidate technically in the state of Texas for the Democrats, and there are a few other positions that we're looking to fill. Land commissioner, I believe there was someone who just announced, and someone else who may announce in the next few days for that role. But there are a few others. We have a lot of statewide offices in the state of Texas. So we'll be talking about those folks, and in some cases having them on the show and talking to them about their campaigns. So, keep it dialed into texassignal.com, and, following us on social at Texas Signal on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. Um, and of course, getting your podcast wherever you got them. And we're also on YouTube. We never talk about YouTube, but this show's also on YouTube. So check that out if you do. Know that November 2nd is on Tuesday, and elections are going on all across the state of Texas. There are a few amendments on the ballot. I Have you voted yet, by the way?
I did, actually. I
Oh,
went this morning
great. Good for
after
you.
our editorial meeting. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm supposed to vote today. Me and Stella. It's Stella's birthday, my wife, and we always vote on her birthday because she's on the 28th of
Happy
October.
birthday to
So
Stella.
happy birthday, Stella. And so we have a couple of local propositions here. So wherever you are, check your local ballot. You might have some local propositions, but this stuff is really important because local Republicans will do this everywhere. But in the city of Austin, they're putting a proposition on the ballot that is undermining our city, and they could be doing the same in yours. So make sure that you read the ballot language, you get educated about what's on the ballot, and that you cast your vote. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. This is to help educate people, get them out there, get them actively involved in their government, and make Texas a better place. So, thanks for listening, and until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye, guys.